you. Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, June 4th, 2024. The Transportation and Commerce Committee meeting will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Spencer.
Present.
Alderman Narayan.
Here.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Present.
Alderman Browning.
Present.
Chair Cone.
Present.
We have 5 present. We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Madam Clerk, I'm having a difficult time getting this email to load with the folders for the agenda. Do we have meeting minutes to approve?
Yes.
What's the date on the meeting minutes?
May 14th, 2024.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from May 14th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 4th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 1st, that we approve our meeting minutes from May 14th, 2024. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Spencer. Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderman Browning.
Aye.
Chair Cone.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Aye. Present. Aye.
We have 5 aye votes.
Thank you. With that, you sustain the motion to approve our meeting minutes. We only had one thing on the agenda, as I recall, for deliberation today, and that's Board Bill 24. It's a very important bill for the airport, so I'm happy that we're able to accommodate and have the meeting this morning to discuss that. I know we have various representatives from the airport, including the airport director, so I will turn it over to her to discuss and give an overview of Board Bill 24.
Thank you, Chairman Cone. And yes, this is an incredibly important bill for us. In just a minute, I'm going to turn it over to Antonio Strong, our Deputy for Finance and Administration, to walk through. And of course, we'll be available, both of us, for questions. But I think the key thing to know about this is it's not just an extension to our use and lease agreement, but it is the next critical stage of moving forward with our potential consolidated terminal plan. So you'll hear in the presentation that Antonio is going to give that not only does this extend the lease 2 years, which is pretty much the standard lease that we had prior, but it is the authorization for that next step and design. So some critical pieces as we move forward to ultimately, hopefully, the construction of a new consolidated terminal. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Antonio. He does have a PowerPoint presentation he's going to bring up to kind of highlight the key points of this third amendment. And then, as I said, we'll both be available for Q&A. Antonio?
Yes. Good morning, Transit Commerce Committee members. As the director mentioned, I do have a presentation. I just want to highlight a few key items that are in this airport use and lease agreement. And so I'm just going to bring up this presentation now. So let me pull this up. Okay, so hope everyone is seeing my screen. Make it just a little bit larger. All right, so we're going to talk about Board Bill number 24, the third amendment to the airport use and lease agreement. So there are 4 key points in this use and lease agreement. The first one is Exhibit A, which outlines our signatory airlines. And I have a page for each one of these sections, so I will talk a little bit more in depth when I get to the next few pages, but this is just a summary of everything. So Exhibit A, if you're looking at the lease agreement, it outlines the signatory airlines that this agreement will be signed with. Exhibit Y, this includes a $650.4 million capital project list that will be authorized under this third amendment. Exhibit Z and attachment 1 is the government's management plan, which is a collaboration between the airport and the airlines to ensure that these capital projects are performed or constructed under collaboration under the airport and the airlines. Then attachment 2 is the authorization process for the architectural design of a potential consolidated terminal project. This one key item to remember with this third amendment, this does not completely authorize the consolidated terminal project yet. This is where we will design the consolidated terminal project, and then at another point, there will be a voting process where we will determine if we're going to move forward with a consolidated terminal project. So signatory airlines. So there are currently 12 signatory airlines. And with this agreement, we signed this agreement with the signatory airlines, and this gives the airlines certain rights and privileges to operate at the airport. It also established the terms for using space in the terminal, defines the lease premises, it allocates maintenance responsibilities, and it just has several other different terms in the agreement when the signatory airlines signed this airport use and lease agreement. So the original agreement, this is why we're talking about a third amendment, because the original agreement was signed July the 1st, and it went from July the 1st, 2016 until June 30th, 2021. So that was a 5-year agreement. One of the first times that we signed an agreement that extended beyond just 1 year. Then we had an extension, our first amendment, which extended the agreement between June 30th, 2021 until June 30th, 2023. And the second amendment extended the agreement from July 1, 2023 until June 30th, 2025. So what we're talking about for this third amendment is a term period of 2 years between the period July 1, 2025 until June 30th, 2027, which I have written down at the bottom of this agreement. One of the major commitments as a signatory air carrier, you agreed to spend about $2.2 million in landing fees over the term of this next 2 years, which is actually 1.1 million per year. We also prorate that because there are signatory airlines that can sign on after this agreement is effective, and there's a prorated amount of about $16,000 per month if you sign on after this agreement becomes effective. So, and as I mentioned, this agreement comes with $650.4 million in capital projects, one of the largest capital project undertakings that the airport has performed here at the airport. So if you're looking at the actual board bill, if you're looking at it electronically, if you turn to page 20, this is that summary in page 20. It just summarizes the total cost of the projects, and this is where I'm getting that $650.4 million. But it also summarizes the different funding sources for these projects. As you can see, one of the largest funding sources will be bonds. That's what GARB means, General Airport Revenue Bonds. So the largest portion of the of purchasing or performing these capital projects will be with the use of bond proceeds. And you know, with bond proceeds, we will come forward to you for approval for those bond proceeds in the future as we undertake these capital projects.
Antonio,
Yes, sir.
could you just go back to that last slide? And I know we have at least one new committee member, and I know, sometimes the general public, especially on bills that have this kind of attention, are interested in what the various acronyms can stand for. Can you just run through those real quick for everyone's benefit?
Sure. So AIP stands for Airport Improvement Grants. So Those are federal grant programs that we may be eligible for in the future. Some of the capital projects, you have to go through a process to get approval from the Federal Aviation Administration to utilize airport improvement grants. And you can see that there are no dollars here associated yet. But as we move forward with these capital projects, there is a possibility that we would receive airport improvement grants. We would apply for those grants as we take forward, moving along with these projects. And then, you know, we can fill in these boxes here if we do receive some of those airport improvement grant dollars. One of the newest grant programs that the federal government allowed was a new grant process called Building Infrastructure Law grant, which we just use as an acronym BIL. So again, that is another federal program. We do anticipate that we would receive about $4.4 million of BIL grant funds in the near future. PAYGO PFC, passenger. So PFC stands for passenger facility charges. So every time that you kind of take a trip somewhere from any airport, there is a charge on your ticket of $4.50. That $4.50 is charged to passengers traveling throughout the nation, and it's charged at every airport. And that $4.50 goes into a bank, and we are allowed to ask the government, federal government, to use those funds for future infrastructure building and terminal improvements. It is something that you have to go through a rigorous process to apply to use those dollars. But it is something that we receive basically from the passenger because they pay that $4.50. The airports retain $4.11 of that $4.50. The airlines retain 39 cents of that $4.50 charge that is charged to the airports. Charged to the passengers. This acronym, Airport Development Fund, that is the airport dollars. So as we charge our tenants and we charge our airlines to operate here at the airport, there is a certain portion of our non-aeronautical fees or revenues that we charge to our tenants that we retain. So approximately right now, we retain about $6 million per year. And that goes into our airport development fund. So this fund is what the airports retain for themselves, and that we can use that money for future projects. And then the last two items is what I mentioned before is general airport revenue bonds. And that is what we do. We issue bonds to pay for capital projects that we plan to take forward. But anytime we issue bonds, that is something that goes forward. We collaborate with the Comptroller's office, and that is something that is brought forward to this board for approval before we move forward with issuing bonds.
Antonio, one additional comment I'll make on this. As you can see, there's a significant amount of dollars tied to this third amendment, the $650 million. It's very important to the airlines that we continue to look for every grant opportunity and every revenue stream enhancement that we can to offset that cost, because the airlines are going to come back and pay for that general airport revenue or that GARB. Those are the numbers that there's going to be built into their rate base on an annual basis. So we can't charge, when we get grants, we cannot charge them back for the grants because we're giving that money from whether it's the federal or whether it's the state level. So while you see the AIP columns blank right now, there will be monies that we will apply for, and we are currently do so, and we expect some awards. As those get added over time, that'll help offset that potential amount of GARBs that we sell, which ultimately, as Antonio said, would come through the Transportation and Commerce Committee for approval at such time when we're ready to sell them. Thank you, Antonio.
All right. The next slide just kind of gives you a list of some of the projects that are part of this 650.4 million. It's not meant to be an entire comprehensive list, but this is just some of the projects that you will see in this project list. So Terminal 1, restroom and plumbing improvements, loading dock improvements, plumbing improvements throughout the airport, departures drive improvements, HVAC upgrades, Lindbergh Tunnel upgrades, utility tunnel upgrades, there's several items. Our Cargo City pavement improvements, Terminal 1 Metrolink structural stair improvements, demolition of our concourses A and B if we do receive approval for a consolidated terminal project, demolition of the Jetlinks hangar, several other items here. We will activate concourses C and D, a new commissary, renovation of our concourse C and D, main entrance roof replacement, public roadway improvements, and lastly another box of projects here. You'll see cargo pavement improvements, generator replacement, LED light upgrades, upgrade building automated system server, information technology upgrade. So you can see there's several projects that are built into this third amendment. And regardless if we do move forward with a consolidated terminal project, these are what we call our enabling project. These are projects that we really need to move forward with, whether or not we move forward with a consolidated terminal project or not. The building is, as you know, more than about 60 years old. There's a lot of projects that we need to maintain this airport, even if we did not move forward with a consolidated terminal project. So this Third Amendment also comes with a project governance management structure. As you know, that this is one of the largest undertakings that the airport has done. So what we want to ensure is that there is collaboration throughout this project time frame between the airport and between the airlines. So this is to encourage collaboration and resolve any issues that might pop up during the phases of building these projects. So this governance structure just outlines the voting process. It outlines the airlines improvements. So when you see this word ATR, ATR actually represents airline technical rep. So they will have an airline technical rep that will represent all of the voices from those 12 signatory airlines. And they will be embedded in this process as we move along the phases of these capital projects. And we kind of chunked up the projects into 3 different phases that you will actually see on the next slide. We call it phase A, B, and C. But this is the voting process. The governance structure is completely outlined in this Third Amendment to resolve issues as we move forward through this process of building these projects. Lastly, this is the authorization process for the architectural design of the potential consolidated terminal project. So this is also where you see where we've broken up the projects into what we consider stage A, stage B, and stage C. And if you're looking at the actual board bill, if you look at pages 30 to 31, it actually breaks up those projects into these different stages. And what you will also see is words like off-ramp. So off-ramp, what that off-ramp means is the airlines wanted to have an opportunity to pause the program during the design phases of these projects to ensure that we agree on the costs of these projects as we continue to move forward beyond design and move to the construction phase of the project. So these off ramps give the opportunities for the airlines to take another look, pause the program, pause the moving of these capital projects, and take a vote to determine if we want to continue to move forward based upon the design of the project. Because once we get the design, that will tell us, we have estimated costs embedded into this third amendment, but as they get through the design, some of those costs may change. Some of the costs might be less than what we have projected. Some of the costs might be a little bit more. But this gives the airlines the opportunity to have a voice in looking at these projects and determining if we're going to move forward. You will also see words like CMAR. So traditionally, when we built projects, we would have a firm that would complete the design of the projects. Then there will be then we would bid out the process to obtain a construction firm to build the project. And so when you have that old traditional process, there's a possibility as you're building the project that you might steer away from what the design firm originally put together. With CMAR, because it actually stands for Construction Management at Risk. So that is a project delivery method, whereas the construction manager oversees the project from the design to the construction phase. And they deliver the project at a guaranteed maximum price, which is determined between the 60 to 90% design phase of the project. But if you have a design firm and a construction firm working collaboratively throughout the process, you can make changes and you can get to a guaranteed maximum price of what the cost of the project will be. So that's why you will see words like CMAR, which is something different than what the traditional process has been in the future. But this just gives you kind of that stage look at what the approval and authorization steps will be once we get through these enabling projects, and hopefully as we're moving through this process, we will get a vote for approval for a consolidated terminal project. And as you can see, if we do receive that approval, the consolidated terminal project construction would start between fiscal year 27 to fiscal year 31. Are there any questions?
Antonio, there are just a couple more points I want to highlight. So I think what was critically important, you heard Antonio talk about the CMAR, and we'd be remiss if we didn't thank Chairman Cohn and this committee for helping us get that through, because that was a critical step that the airlines with a project this size indicated they would not move forward if we didn't have a newer, more efficient way of working with the construction and the design firm. So thank you to this team and to Chairman Cohn for championing that and getting that through. Throughout this process, we've run a lot of parallel tracks, and some of the things you don't see because we're only talking about the third amendment today and what goes with that. But we've been doing the enabling projects that were brought forward last year. Those bonds just went out. We closed on those last week. And those were those design and construction of those enabling projects that the airlines had approved last year. In addition to this, the other piece that you will see is that is not necessarily highlighted in here, but as we get through the approval process today, and with the Board of Aldermen and estimates and apportionments on getting this lease approved, we are also concurrently getting the airline signatures. While we have verbal agreement from all of the airlines, they actually have to get their corporate and legal sign-offs as well. So we have 2 of them back. We expect that by middle of June or so, we'll have those signatory airlines back with their signatures at the same time that we're running this process. So in order for us to be able to keep this timeline moving, we've had a lot of parallel tracks that we've been running. We also have been running the environmental study. That's with the FAA. That's really outside of your parameters, but the FAA has been doing the environmental study. They closed out the study last year on the West Airfield projects, those original enabling projects that I talked about. And now we've got a public meeting that we'll announce probably next week, which will close out the phase of the environmental that they're required to do for the consolidated terminal. That's important because we cannot put out the RFP for design until such time the FAA has granted us that environmental to move forward. So there's a lot of things that are moving with this. The team has done an incredible job of coordinating this with Alderman Cone and making sure that we can keep things moving forward. So we do appreciate that. And I think when you think about the cost that's in this, that $650 million, which does include the design and those additional enabling projects. Last year, the airlines authorized $330 million. So we're almost at $1 billion that the airlines have signed and agreed to move forward with. That's a third of the cost of the total project, assuming when we get to those design benchmarks at 30% design and 60% design, that stays intact. That's why you see that the airlines have to have a critical piece for this. They're going to pay for the bulk of this. And it's important to them, and they will not move these steps forward if they don't see the collaboration and the effort that we're trying to look at alternative revenue streams and building those up, as well as these additional grants. So I just wanted to add a little bit of flavor there to hopefully, I know it's a lot to put in front of you, but I hope that, you know, in between what Antonio has shared and then just some additional comments, you get a good feel for the importance of this third amendment. So with that, certainly we'll open it up to any questions and happy to answer them, any that you have.
Great, thank you so much. We'll go ahead and start questions from the committee or comments if there are any. Vice Chair Spencer. Alderman Narayan.
Thank you, Chairman Cone. I just wanted to thank you, Rhonda, and your team. I know that this is complex stuff, and you guys always come in prepared and ready to explain it without us having to do a whole ton of homework on it on our end up front and make it make sense. And so I just wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you, Alderman Orion.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate the time you took, Alderman Cone, Chairman Cone, to slow down the presentation at times. I'm new to this committee, so I'm still learning a lot, and I appreciate that. Thank you for that really thorough presentation. A lot of times when I had questions, the next slide would be the answer. So I always am grateful for that. Thank you. So the questions I had, you started to answer. I think Director Hamdenberg, that there would be a public meeting of some sort coming up, because I heard about airline input and I wondered about the community input side. So do you have any more information about that?
Yeah, the next public meeting is a requirement of the FAA for that environmental phase. So that public meeting, and we're finalizing the dates, but it will be in the next couple of months because I think right now it's scheduled for August, because the FAA has committed that by September, they would bring their finding of the environmental. We fully expect that there's no impact that would not move the project forward, but they have to go through their process. And part of that process is a public hearing. During that public hearing, there will be presentations made as to how the environmental study went, the things that were looked at. And it's all related to noise, to wildlife, to environmental, air quality, all of those things. So that public meeting will be focused purely on the environmental piece and will be in partnership with the FAA. It'll be here at the airport on the B concourse. It's open to the public, just as we had with the prior meetings during the design phases and stuff. But we don't have the date finalized, but Alderwoman Schweitzer, we should have that finalized in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you so much. That's really interesting. And the CMAR process is really interesting too. I've heard more about different state projects being funded in a way where it's design construction. A lot of times in, you know, when we do different things in the city, sometimes we end up with a study, a design, and then construction, you know, all kind of separated out. And then it's hard to figure out how to spend the money. So that you said that sounded like a new process that was put in place. Does that have to do with the off ramps that you all mentioned as well?
Yeah, on the off ramps were part of the governance structure that was critically important to the airlines, you know, thinking about a $2.83 billion project that they're going to pay the bulk for. They wanted to see that during that process that these design benchmarks at 30 and 60% design, that the price is coming in what is anticipated. And so during those, at each of those benchmarks, in conjunction with the design team, in conjunction with the construction management team, and of course, the program management team, which has also the airport team involved. There will be a lot of discussions to see that the design is tracking to that cost estimate. And if it's not, then how do we work collectively with all of those different entities to make sure? And then they authorize the next step at 60%. And then at that 60% is when the design team and the construction team agree on this guaranteed maximum price. And that means that they can design it and build it, and then the risk goes back to them. They guarantee that price, the airlines authorize that, and we move forward to that full completion at 90%. And then that's when they authorize the construction. Right now, the timeline that we have, assuming everything moves forward, we would anticipate that June 26 is when that 90% design would be done, and they would authorize that construction. The reason that all of these parallel tracks are so important is that these enabling projects and, you know, redesigning and moving a lot of the old infrastructure we have to make way for the new part of the western half of the terminal will all be done in this 2-year window while that design process is going on. So when they authorize that design, we already have the construction team on hand, and we have all of these enabling projects done so that timeline can start immediately. And those were some of the critical factors to being able to look at the CMAR project. And again, you know, we can also look at value engineering during that process. So if some of these design costs are escalating, then we start looking collaboratively with all those team members to say, is there some value engineering to help keep that dollar amount on target? So it is a, you know, I guess those design benchmarks, and we call them off ramps, were a part of the governance structure that gave the airline the comfort level that there's collaboration here with everybody and we can move forward. So I hope that answered the question. I know it was little.
No, it does, especially because I would worry that something would happen and then people don't like the project anymore and there's a way to just stop it. And after so much money is spent or so much effort's put into it, and the goal has been set to do this. So it's good to hear that it's more of a time to check in and kind of realign to make sure everything's moving forward in a way that can be done and is possible with the budget that exists. And I really appreciate all the information, and thanks for your time and for answering all my questions.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Alderman Browning.
Thank you both to Antonio and Rhonda. I'm always impressed by the incredible knowledge you have and your ease of explaining it to us. You really do make it easy for us to consider these really complicated subjects, and I appreciate that. And also just emphasize that I'm excited about these projects because the airport is the front door to our region for a lot of people who come here, and we know that it brings a lot of value to our city. So I really just appreciate all the work you do and how you manage this, you know, what is essentially a small and very special city. So just really appreciate you all. And I think all my questions have been answered. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. I'll go back to Alderwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any questions either. I just am grateful this is moving forward. Thank you for your leadership, Director Hommenbergy.
Okay, if there's no other questions, Madam Clerk, are there any comments that have been entered into the record?
Alderman Cone, or Chairman Cohen, I did see a request, I think from Rosalind, that we forward this presentation, and we will do that right after the meeting. We'll forward the presentation so it can be distributed to the TNC committee.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'm not seeing any other alderpersons on the line for further questions. So with that, I will entertain a motion on Board Bill 24.
I move that we pass Board Bill 24 with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Previous roll.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 4th Ward, seconded by the Alderman from the 8th Ward, that we pass Board Bill 24 out with a due pass recommendation. There's been a request from the Alderwoman of the 1st for previous roll. Is there any objection to previous roll? Hearing no objection, Board Bill 24 passes out of committee with a due pass recommendation. I do want to note that there was a committee substitute that was provided for Board Bill 24 that has some kind of grammatical changes to sentences and whatnot within the board bill. So I unfortunately didn't have the time to file that and the appropriate time under our rules. So we'll be working with the clerk and others to possibly do a floor substitute for Board Bill 24 when it comes out on committee. So I just want to give you all a heads up that was kind of already in the works prior to our committee hearing this morning, but unfortunately didn't make the deadline for submission to the committee. So we'll work with all the appropriate parties to see if we still need to do it. And if so, it'll come out on the floor, but I don't want you guys being caught off guard if it does come out on the floor. So just a heads up.
And just to tag on to Alderman Cone on that, it's just some grammatical and some refining of words. As the airlines had all their legal departments, there's no changes that have any material or impact on the meaning of the lease or on the contents behind it. So when you've got, 100 pages of stuff, there's always going to be grammatical errors and a couple of eye-catching things. So it's nothing that changes the context or meaning. It's just some grammatical and wordsmithing.
Thank you. Are there any other items for discussion?
Thank you all very much for your support. We appreciate it. And we look forward to continuing to move the project forward.
Likewise. Thank you all. Appreciate you for attending the hearing today. We don't have any new items or other discussion topics for today, unless there's anyone on the committee that has any questions or suggestions. Seeing none, all members are present. Please make note of that, Madam Clerk, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by the Alderman of the 8th, seconded by the Alderman from the 4th. There's been a request for previous roll. Is there any objection to previous roll? Seeing no objection to previous roll, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.